Hello. This is my second attempt to record something to put on Facebook for you guys tonight. I found out you can't leave the TV on while you're doing this. It's become some background noise. Just some crazy movie I was watching. One of the things that we've been doing at St. Mary's and St. John St. Joseph's has been a study on Les Miserables. We did something in Advent on the Christmas Carol and the Redemption of Scrooge. And this one was called The Grace of Les Miserables by a man named Matt Rall. There's a video that goes along with us, and it's a group discussion, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to post the videos, copyrights and all that stuff. So Maureen ran a group, and Emilio and I ran a group. So given the current restrictions and everything, what I thought I could do tonight for you is we could talk a little bit about at least the third chapter and give you some questions, and maybe you can talk about them as a family, group of friends. I'm not sure how we would do it on Facebook, but it's something to start. Keep you in the Lenten mood, the Lenten atmosphere. So we started talking about Jean Valjean and who he was and his need of conversion, Javert and the sense of justice. Well, this week was supposed to be about Fontaine, the mother of Cosette. And what we learned from her, and the question that Rawls puts before us is, do we see the poor? Do we really see the people who live in poverty and are impoverished? Do we really connect ourselves in solidarity with those throughout the world who scrape by every single day, whether it's to provide for their kids or it's to just buy food? And, those of you who really know me know I'm a social worker too, as well as a priest. And I remember always looking at the stats on poverty and how many in the United States live in poverty. But even our poverty in the United States is not what the poverty is in other countries. People will go to other countries and looking back and they'll tell me the people living in the streets and the rampant hunger and disease. And I take a step back and I think to myself, yeah, we have hungry and poor and I'm concerned about them and our shelters are filled and people just need something. And I think to myself, wow, how worse it is in other countries. And then there's the poverty of spirit that Matthew's gospel talks about, that poverty within ourselves of, thinking we always need more, of our angers, of, not being able to relate to one another. And there's a poverty in that. And when we cannot connect with each other, when we can't be people of faith together, because there's so many crazy divisions that we have, we're all poor. And this whole concept of poverty, if you look through the scriptures, is a thing that the church has struggled with since the very beginning. We have one gospel telling us, blessed are the poor. Then Matthew's gospel, blessed are the poor in spirit. So were they pulling back on what poverty was all about? Or were they trying to struggle with, what did this really mean for the Christian? And I wonder that myself. What does it mean for me as a priest? I don't take a vow of poverty. Some people think I do, but I don't. I'm called to live in the spirit of poverty. For people who are working every day, what does it mean to be poor? Is poverty just a lack of having material things or lack of money? Or are we poor in other ways too? Because I think you can have all the money in the world and you can have all the things in the world and be very poor because you have no friends. You have nobody to love you. And you can have no money, live in a tenement, and have everything. And that's not glorifying the poor, because there are a lot of poor people who are poor because of envy and greed, and a lot of rich people who just give away what they have so that other people can live. It's a really hard thing, but it's something we have to struggle with and I think wrestle with ourselves as a Christian people. What does it mean to be poor? You remember in seminary, I worked in the inner city of Newark, and I remember going to visit somebody who lived in one of the tenement high-rises in the inner city of Newark. And Very different atmosphere from upstate New York guy. But I do remember we get to this folks' apartment. They lived in the tenement or subsidized housing. We walked in and we were treated like royalty. And there was coffee and there was something to eat and the conversation. They did not have a lot. But yet they treated us like we were God. And I always remember that because it's like, that's why I think we all need to treat each other hospitably, welcoming. If we don't have a lot, we give what we have. Fontaine, I think, can teach us this, that she was so judged by other people. She had a child outside of wedlock. She couldn't afford to take care of the baby, so she left the baby with these two people who ran a bar, a tavern, and they were kind of shady. And she goes to the city, and she starts working in the mill that Jean Valjean ran. And this was after he had been on parole, gotten out of the prison. He was looking for a job. No one would hire him because he was a convicted felon. And he goes to the bishop's house. The bishop gives him he steals the silver. The bishop then gives him the silver, and he goes on to make his life better. So this is right after that, when he becomes the mayor of that town, whose name I can't say. But yet, he's working, he's running this mill, and so he's got Cosette there, and if you look at the Hugh Jackson movie, what you see is that he doesn't even look at her, sort of like today's gospel, because he heard about her past. Go ahead, deal with her. Says to the foreman fires her and kicks her out. Well, now she doesn't have any money. How is she going to support her child? How is she going to support Cosette? So what does she do? She sells her hair. One account, she sells her teeth, and then she becomes a prostitute because she needed to support her daughter. And then she dies because of the hardness of that life. But what that really makes us think about, how do we as a church community take care of the poor? Now here at St. Mary's, St. John, St. Joseph's, we do a great job. We could always do better. I mean, I think there's always more we can do. But I think the point we're at is because we do such a good job, what's the next step? We do a great collection. We do underwear. We do socks for the homeless. We took care of the veterans on Veterans Day. We do all the stuff for Concerned You. We do the stuff for Circles of Mercy. The list goes on and on and on. But the question has to be, are we face to face with the poor? Do we see our brothers and sisters by having a meal with them? By sitting down at a soup kitchen, and not only feeding them, but eating with them. Sort of like Cosette. No one ever talked to her. I'm not sure anybody ever really got to know her story. When they did, they condemned her. And she becomes a symbol of the poor. Matt Rouse will talk about that this whole thing of Cosette is a challenge to us. Sorry, this is the book. That as we consider it, we have to ask ourselves, what is our feelings towards the poor? How do we view those in poverty? How do we view those who are on social service? What is our opinion about how we take care of the poor? I often hear in my social worker coming out, while they can just go get a job, which is required by the reform of the Welfare Act in 1997, but yet I always use this example to people. So think about Cosette. So she gets a job. Who's going to take care of her daughter? Same thing today. Fontaine was able to leave Cosette with those tavern owners. But a lot of people today, they get a job. They can't afford having childcare. Somebody gets sick. There's no one to take care of the baby. They have to stay home. And that happens enough, then they lose the job. There has to be some intermediate step where instead of this black and white, again, think of Fontaine. If she had a place where she could have good childcare to leave her daughter so she could go to work, make money so she could support her daughter, and buy that apartment, get food. So much could have been avoided and it could have changed the course of her life. I don't know how we change that. I really don't. I'm not really quite familiar with how we can make that systemic change, but I think it's something that we as a Christian community, we really need to be able to look at. Something else we might want to consider is that Mr. Rawls always has a scripture verse. But so the scripture verse that he uses for this one is, if I can find it here. Here it is, Matthew 25, 31 to 46. One of my favorite passages. It's whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do unto me. You know, and who are the least of these today? Who are the people that we might need to really want to look at? And I think you all know me. You know who I think the poorest of the poor are today, and those who have a mental health issue. You know, I just read last night that Governor Cuomo is looking for therapists to be on a call line to help people right now, and the mental health effects that are going to start rising because of isolation, because of not being able to connect with other people, which is such a human need, to be in connection with other people, to not be isolated. And at least now we're thinking about that. But also the anxiety that people have. And anyway, you know, you've heard my talks and you've heard me talk about this stuff. And one of the things I'll talk about, you know, is the poverty is, how do we view people in our parishes who have a mental health issue? Would we invite Fontaine to come into our parish because she looks so different? Think about it. She had cut off her hair. She had no teeth. Would we see her as a child of God or one of those people? I'm thinking, what do we say about the folks with mental illness or mental health problems? You know, there before the grace of God go any of us. You think about the stats around depression, it's 20%. So in a congregation, there's at least 4 or 5 people who have diagnosed mental health disorders, especially the disorder of depression. You know, the statistics are there. And I am a firm believer that maybe some of the poverty of the church community is we don't welcome people in. Because just because they have a mental health problem, they could give us so much. We don't say no to somebody who has cancer. We don't say no to somebody who has high blood pressure. We don't say no. We don't say anything about the person who has epilepsy. But because it's mental health, we see them want to put them along the side of the road, like the man born blind, or even like Fontaine. Get rid of her, put her out of our sight. So at least for me, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, that's the group I think about. Who do you think about? Who is Fontaine in your life? Who do you see that's on the side of the society? Who do you see that we really need to reach out for? And I think as a Christian community, both of our parishes, or whatever parish you belong to if you're watching this, I really think we could do something phenomenally great in the world. Because again, if all of us work together, what happens? The world changes. So the assignment that, you know, Mr. Rawls gives, what I liked about this is, you know, an assignment each week so you could do something is, well, all of this entails going out. Well, here's the last one. You know, listening to someone else's story. So maybe this is something we can do, is maybe listen to someone else's story of how they're experiencing this time of whatever we want to call it, you know, forced isolation or just trying to keep people away from social distancing. But listen to someone's story, because I know that there are people who are dealing with tremendous anxiety and fear. And if you listen to their story, you don't have to do anything else, but just listen. You'll make their day. So I encourage you to do that. You may want to watch the movie too, Les Miserables. Phenomenally great movie. I really liked it. So now, one last thing. is I was thinking today that, trying to think about how we keep ourselves together as a parish community. Sorry about this video, but I'm home and I'm trying to do this on my computer. What I was thinking about was this. I know people have a lot of prayer intentions. So what I was thinking about was, if you could email a petition to me or to Deacon Greg or to any people on the staff, I'll get them. And if you want it public, we could pray for it at any of the devotions or at Mass. If you want it private, then I'll keep it in my own heart. I'd like to be able to do that. I want the community, our communities, to connect with each other. And maybe when this is all done, I'm really, really thinking we're going to be a strong community. Just not St. Mary's, but St. John, St. Joseph's, and wherever else we're connecting with people. So if you have a petition, email it to me or email to one of the staff. Just make sure if private or public. I won't say anything if you don't tell me. I'll keep it in my own heart. So, all right. So stay safe. If you're working from home, have fun. All of our school guys, teens and younger people and college students, good luck. I'm going to be trying to do telesessions this week on the phone for some of my clients. So our lives are very different right now. But know you're all in my prayers, and you have my blessing. And I'm here if you need me. Okay? Have a good night and a good week.